The fastest way to commit financial fraud in America isn't through hacking or heists, it's through the tax code loophole called religious exemption. It's through the psychological weapon called divine authority. It's through the legal shield that says you cannot question God's chosen. And nowhere in America has this weaponized faith been perfected more brutally than in Florida. Tonight, you're about to meet 5 individuals who proved that the cross is the best place to hide a crime. They didn't rob banks, they didn't sell drugs, they built empires of betrayal, where the collection plate was the vault, where the congregation was the victim pool, and where the word blessed meant you're about to lose everything. This is the Florida Archive. 5 names, 5 sacred scams. If you've ever put money in a donation box, paid a tithe, or trusted someone because they quoted scripture, you need to hear what happened.
Our next individual had a different strategy. He declared himself exempt from the government entirely, and instead of a mansion, he built something far stranger, a theme park with dinosaurs and a tax philosophy so delusional it would cost him a decade of his life.
Kent Hovind, the dinosaur tax evader. Pensacola, Florida, 2006. If you drive down the right back road in the Florida Panhandle, past the pine trees and the swamps, past the evangelical billboards warning about hell, you'll find something that doesn't belong in this century, or any century, really. A theme park called Dinosaur Adventureland. It looks like a fever dream designed by a homeschool parent with a budget of $17. There are giant fiberglass dinosaurs, bright blue, cartoonishly fierce, standing next to wooden crosses. There's a zip line, a playground, a creationist museum where dioramas show humans and velociraptors living side by side in the Garden of Eden. And at the center of it all, there's a man in cargo shorts preaching to a crowd about how evolution is a lie, how the Earth is 6,000 years old, and how the federal government has no legal authority over God's chosen people. His name is Kent Hovind, but everyone calls him Dr. Dino. And for years, he's been running a cash-only empire that operates on one core belief. If you quote the Bible enough times, the IRS will leave you alone. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Here's what you need to understand about Kent Hovind. He has a doctorate. Granted, it's from an unaccredited institution that operates out of a mobile home, but he's articulate, he's charismatic, he can debate scientists, quote legal precedents, and run a multi-million-dollar business. But somewhere along the way, he made a decision that millions of dollars in revenue from book sales, DVD sales, theme park admissions, and speaking fees didn't need to be reported to the government. Because in Kent Hovind's theology, he doesn't live in the United States. He lives in the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven, according to Hovind, is a sovereign nation that exists outside the jurisdiction of federal law. This is called the sovereign citizen movement. It's a pseudo-legal philosophy that claims the US government is a corporation, that birth certificates are contracts, and that if you use the right magic words, if you declare yourself a citizen of God instead of a US citizen, you can opt out of taxes, regulations, and criminal law. It's absolute nonsense, but it's appealing nonsense. Because who wouldn't want to believe that there's a secret legal loophole that lets you keep all your money and never face consequences? Kent Hovind didn't just believe it, he weaponized it. He told his employees they didn't need to pay taxes. He told them that Social Security numbers were the mark of the beast. He paid them in cash, off the books, no withholding, no records. And when the IRS came asking questions, he told them he didn't owe them a dime. Because in his mind, he worked for God, and God doesn't pay taxes. Now, if Kent Hovind had just refused to pay taxes and waited for the government to come after him, this would be a simple case of tax evasion. But Hovind did something far more calculated. He tried to hide the money.
and he did it in a way that proves he knew exactly what he was doing. Let me explain. In the United States, if you deposit or withdraw more than $10,000 in cash, the bank is required to file a currency transaction report with the federal government. It's an anti-money laundering law designed to track large cash movements and catch criminals. Kent Hovind knew this. So over the course of several years, he made cash withdrawals from his ministry's bank accounts. And here's the pattern: $9,500, $9,600, $9,200, $9,800. Always just under $10,000. Always. This isn't an accident. This isn't a coincidence. This is a federal crime called structuring, also known as smurfing. It's the deliberate act of breaking up large transactions into smaller ones to avoid federal reporting requirements. And the IRS Criminal Investigation Division documented 45 separate instances of Hovind's doing this, totaling nearly $500,000. Think about what that means. Kent Hovind stood in front of audiences and preached about honesty, integrity, and living according to God's law. And then he went to the bank and made withdrawals calculated to the $100 mark to avoid federal detection. That's not theology, that's fraud. And it left a paper trail so obvious, so precise, that when the federal prosecutors laid it out in court, even Hovind's own lawyers had no defense. Why does religion shield criminals? We know the philosophy is insane, but why did he think it would work? July 13th, 2006. The raid happens at dawn. IRS criminal investigation agents, backed by local police, descend on Dinosaur Adventureland and Kent Hovind's home. They're not looking for evidence. They already have the evidence. The bank records, the structured withdrawals, the payroll violations, the failure to file tax returns for over a decade. They're here to arrest him because Kent Hovind isn't just a tax evader. He's a symbol. He's the face of the sovereign citizen movement. He's the guy who tells people they can ignore the government and get away with it. He's been doing this for years, openly, defiantly, selling DVDs about how to structure your finances to avoid federal jurisdiction. And the IRS is done playing. When the agents arrive, Kent Hovind is genuinely shocked. He actually believed his legal arguments would protect him. He believed that if he filed documents declaring himself a non-resident alien and a minister of God, the courts would have to dismiss the charges. But the legal system doesn't work that way, and Kent Hovind is about to learn it the hard way. The trial is a spectacle. Kent Hovind represents himself. This is always a bad idea, but for sovereign citizens, it's part of the ideology. They believe that lawyers are part of the corrupt system, that they can use common law arguments to outsmart the judge. And so Kent Hovind stands in federal court and argues that the United States government has no jurisdiction over him. He claims that Kent Hovind, the person, and Kent Hovind, the legal entity, written in all caps, are two different beings. He claims that his earnings weren't income because he didn't trade his labor for Federal Reserve notes. He claims that the IRS is operating on maritime law and that the courtroom is actually a ship. The judge listens.
And then the judge says something that every sovereign citizen eventually hears. Mr. Hovind, your arguments are without merit. The law applies to everyone who earns income in this country. You are not exempt. The jury deliberates for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. 58 federal charges: tax evasion, structuring, obstructing federal agents. And when the verdict is read, Kent Hovind doesn't look angry. He looks confused. He built an entire worldview where he was the hero, the government was the villain, and truth would prevail. But the courtroom doesn't care about your worldview. It cares about evidence. January 2007. Kent Hovind is sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. He's ordered to pay over $600,000 in restitution. The government seizes Dinosaur Adventureland, and Kent Hovind,
The man who told thousands of people they could live outside the law if they just believed hard enough, is led away in handcuffs. He serves almost the entire sentence. He's released in 2015, older, quieter, but still convinced he was persecuted for his faith. And here's the tragedy. He learned nothing. Within months of his release, he's back to selling the same sovereign citizen arguments. He's back to telling people the government is illegitimate. He's back to fundraising, back to preaching, back to the same cycle. Because for people like Kent Hovind, the con isn't just about money, it's about identity. He's Dr. Dino. He's the man who stood up to the empire, and admitting he was wrong would mean admitting his entire life was a lie. So he doesn't. And somewhere in Florida, there are people who still believe him. At what point does refusing to pay taxes stop being a principled stand and become a mental illness? The answer is when you start believing your own legal fiction. Kent Hovind didn't just evade taxes, he built an entire theology around tax evasion. He convinced himself that the law didn't apply to him, that he was chosen, that he was right, and everyone else was deceived. And that belief cost him a decade of his life. Because the IRS doesn't care if you think you're a sovereign citizen. They care if you paid your taxes. And if you didn't, they'll take everything you built. If you've ever watched someone you care about fall into conspiracy thinking so deep they can't climb out, then you know why Kent Hovind's story matters. Because he didn't just ruin his own life, he gave thousands of people a blueprint for self-destruction, and they're still following it. If you've ever tried to talk someone out of a sovereign citizen belief and felt like you were speaking a different language, drop a comment. Let's talk about how deep the rabbit hole goes. Kent Hovind went to prison for 10 years rather than pay employee taxes for his employees. Was this just greed wrapped in Bible verses? Just extreme greed wrapped in religion? Kent Hovind used legal gibberish to hide his crimes.
But I have not filed any income tax in 28 years. I don't keep any records. I'm not required to. There's no law requiring me to. If I did keep records, and if I did give that to the government and fill out a form, 1040 form, under penalty of perjury, I hereby declare the following information is correct, that form becomes their evidence to prosecute me. They're going to audit 1 out of 3,000 returns, generally. Mine's not in the pile. My chances of being audited are 0 out of 1,000, or 3,000, or 10,000. They just won't do it.
Welcome, boys and girls. My name is Grandpa Hovind.
That's what we're going to cover tonight on income tax. My philosophy is I have not filed any income tax in 28 years.
A sovereign citizen movement. I'm not a member of a loose organization of individuals who claim full autonomy from our federal and state government. I don't do that. I think everybody should obey the rules, and I do.
Sure. Sure. No. And I don't understand what you mean by sovereign citizen. If only God is sovereign.
The sovereign citizen movement. I'm not exactly sure what that is. They also claim the judicial system has no authority over them as a group or as individuals. I don't think I've ever claimed that.
You're a terrible liar.
If there's a law requiring me to file something, I would like to see it. An individual earning money is not income and is not taxable.